also have focused participant-led discussions to have deeper understanding and come out with some of those collaborative ideas. And along the way, we'll also be using during those working group discussions, Google Jamboard, where we can capture some of those quotes and messages that are coming through. And throughout this conversation, throughout this event, please feel free to use the chat as well as the Q&A facility that is already available to share your thoughts and post your queries and questions. And we'll welcome interaction and reflections from you as we move along. And this event is also being live streamed in YouTube as we are speaking right now. And this recording will be available for those who are not able to join. With these words, I want to welcome all of you once again. And specifically, I want to take the name of our distinguished speakers, including Sri Abhishek Singh, Sri Vijay Kumar, Sri Balamurugan, Sri Satyanarayana, Purvi Mehta, Rikin Gandhi, and our moderators Hisham Mundol, Tini Soni, and Stewart Collis. Each one of them leaders in their own terms and champions of sustainable development. We will, of course, get detailed introduction of them when their turn comes. But we are so excited to have you. Thank you so much, and welcome for taking your time amongst your busy schedule to share your thoughts and ideas with us. Now I welcome my colleague Ashu Sikri to present a short slide and a video on what we are doing, what DigitalGreen is doing, specifically around the climate-smart agriculture space. Ashu is leading the new innovations at DigitalGreen. He was previously head of strategy for Crux Informatics, a data delivery and operations company serving the financial services industry. He studied finance, management, and philosophy at the Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania. Ashu, over to you. But before that, thank you everyone for being here. Welcome to this event, and let me wish you a great seminar experience. Over to you, Ashu.
Thanks, Krish. And Shreya, you can go ahead with the intro video. DigitalGreen empowers small-scale producers to lift themselves out of poverty through technology and grassroots partnerships. Over the past 15 years, we've worked with partners such as JEEViKA and RySS, who you will hear from during today's webinar, to reach over 2 million farmers in India in states like Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Odisha. A core pillar of our work is helping partners build the capacity of their frontline extension workers to deliver video-enabled advisory services. We've learned that people are most open to information when it comes from sources who are similar to themselves and in familiar contexts. Given this, our partners produce short, high-quality videos at the district level that feature local farmers demonstrating production practices and sharing testimonials about their benefits. The videos are screened among farmer groups where extension agents facilitate discussion, which enables peer-to-peer knowledge sharing and encourages practice adoption. Extension agents record farmer feedback and track practice adoption. This data is used to iterate on the development of new videos. Randomized controlled trials have validated that the approach works. Community video-enabled extension delivers a 40% gain in adoption rates and a nearly 30% increase in yield relative to traditional methods. Also, this approach is more cost-effective, with a cost of adoption of around $3 versus $24 per adoption for traditional approaches. We're especially proud the majority of our work happens through women-led self-help groups who engage a majority women farmers. We're honored to work with amazing partners to scale this approach. In Bihar, we have worked with JEEViKA since 2012. JEEViKA reaches 6 million households and is scaling the community video approach throughout the state by training its 10,000 village resource persons and deploying 5,000 pico projectors. In Andhra Pradesh, we're honored to support RySS and their paradigm-shifting community-managed natural farming program, which in a few short years has scaled to nearly 700,000 farmers supported by over 3,300 community resource persons. We also continuously innovate to deliver new services to farmers. As COVID disrupted in-person community screenings, we launched AI-enabled chatbots that deliver advisories to farmers on demand over WhatsApp. Also, we're helping farmers better connect with markets by building the capacity of FPOs and enabling farmers to share the cost of transportation to local markets. We're excited to share more about a new program that leverages data to drive the adoption of climate-smart production practices that can deliver win-win outcomes for farmers and the environment.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yeah.
So what do we mean when we talk about climate smart agriculture? Well, agriculture accounts for about 15% of India's total greenhouse gas emissions, about 400 million metric tons, mostly in the form of methane and nitrous oxide, which are especially potent in terms of global warming potential, even more so than carbon dioxide over the next 20 years. Emissions from the sector could grow by 20% over the coming decade, given a growing population. Reducing nitrogen fertilizer, no tillage, residue and water management, manure application, planting nitrogen fixing crops, and trees are examples of climate smart agricultural practices that deliver win-win outcomes. Not only do they reduce yield scale emissions, these practices improve biodiversity. They optimize water usage and improve soil health. They also make farmers more resilient to extreme weather and pest infestations, which is critical in a world where natural shocks will be increasingly frequent. Also, these practices increase income by delivering cost savings on inputs while improving productivity. Also includes crop diversification and shift production patterns towards commodities with an improved nutritional profile. And also, given often play a major role in implementing such practices, amplifying their value can improve gender equity. This all sounds great in theory, but the reality is that farming today doesn't align with these practices. How can we possibly drive tens of millions of independent small-scale producers who are grappling with countless challenges to learn about and adopt such practices? This will require engagement from the entire ecosystem. And the good news is that key stakeholders recognize the potential and are eager to support. On the market side, consumers are demanding more transparency to how their food is grown, and local certification programs like PGS are gaining traction. Agribusinesses want to reduce their Scope 3 emissions and meet net zero commitments, and they recognize that doing so can actually help them reduce their cost of capitals through green bonds and sustainability-linked finance. Financial services companies recognize that climate smart practices are resilient and reduce risk, and are looking at how to price this into products. Policymakers also recognize climate smart ag as a great tool for achieving the sustainable development goals and reaching NDC targets as part of the Paris Agreement. There's now momentum around initiatives that can accelerate adoption of climate smart practices. Things like evolving PDS procurement to support more crop diversity, payment for ecosystem services, rethinking subsidy design to incentivize more judicious use of inputs, and investing in enabling infrastructure like irrigation and solar. We believe what's needed to channel all this interest into action is a credible accounting of what's happening on the ground and how that translates to emissions, and a mechanism for all that data to actually benefit farmers. It's among that backdrop that we're launching a new program in Bihar. We will work in partnership with JEEViKA, the Cereal Systems Initiative for South Asia, and the Environmental Defense Fund to deliver a program with 3 components. 1, we'll advise farmers on climate smart production practices using the community video model. 2, we'll build a measurement, reporting, and verification system, or MRV, that can be used to make credible claims about the emission footprint from agriculture. And 3rd, we'll empower farmers to benefit from this information via a data wallet. You heard about the success of the community video model earlier. Going forward, we'll collaborate with technical partners like CISA and the state agricultural that are promoted through the extension system, adopt more of a climate lens. Also, we'll be collaborating with the government extension system, which reaches millions of farmers throughout Bihar, and its massive network of extension agents have lots of local networks and trust in the community. One thing that's critical about climate smart agriculture is that it's not one size fits all, and it cannot be top down. For example, optimizing nitrogen fertilizer is great, but it needs to be contextualized for local soil and weather conditions. For this reason, a participatory approach that engages local stakeholders, as the community video model does, is critical. Farmers and local extension agents are best equipped to share what practices are most suited for their context and the enabling infrastructure and services that are missing. We'll capture this information and use it to tailor future advisories and services. To make credible claims about emission reductions, a few things are critical. One is a robust methodology for data collection that provides a reliable record of what practices farmers are following. And second is an accurate model that can convert all this information to estimates about emissions. On the first, the critical question is, how do we effectively capture practice data accurately at scale in a cost-effective way? The good news is VRPs already collect a lot of data, but there's scope to make this more efficient through digitization and to cover parameters that are not presently captured. Over time, as smartphone penetration increases, we can move to a model where farmers record practices in their own logbooks and VRPs play more of a reviewer role. We need to design tools that are easy to use and create incentives for accurate data collection. For instance, aligning VRP performance management and payments to data accuracy. Looking ahead, remote sensing and IoT are demonstrating great potential as a way to efficiently validate ground practices. And we're keen to integrate those as their accuracy increases and their costs come down. Once we have an accurate read of practices on the ground, we need to convert that detail to emission estimates. There are lots of existing climate models, but unfortunately, they're not necessarily accurate for India. Their coefficients are often based on global values and don't represent local soil conditions. We plan to work over the next couple of years with developers of some of these leading climate models to calibrate them based on ground data and identify which eventually are best suited to make claims in the Indian context. Here's a quick view of what these tools actually look like. We've started data collection in Gurwa block in Gaya district in Bihar over the last few weeks and are testing the mobile data collection app and the data verification protocol in partnership with block level managers at JEEViKA. And that brings us to the next point, which is what happens with all this data. More specifically, given it's ultimately farmers that are implementing these practices, how does all this data benefit them? That's where the data wallet comes in. The data wallet is a combination of two things: a virtual repository where farmers have a digital record of their land, their production practices, their yield, and estimated emissions over time, and a mechanism to exercise control over how that data is shared and used. For one, the information is available back to farmers, and they can use it to support their own decision-making and crop planning. Farmers can choose to share the data, for instance, with providers of agronomic services to receive more targeted advisories. They could choose to share it with certifying agencies and buyers who could integrate them in their supply chains and perhaps even pay a price premium. A multi-year record of practices and emission footprint could be really valuable to financial services providers who could enable access to loans and insurance products at reduced rates. There might even be models where farmers can aggregate and anonymize data and monetize it as a group. Ultimately, usability is key. How do we create a system where farmers are aware of what data is being captured and can grant informed consent over how it's used? We will look and work with frameworks like the data empowerment and protection architecture and the account aggregator model as references here. The actual data sharing can happen in a peer-to-peer way that reduces concentration risk through open source protocols like FarmStack. We think now is an especially critical time to be thinking along these lines as the AgriStack initiative moves forward. We're excited to launch this program, which we hope will benefit small-scale producers in the years to come and harness the potential of the ClimateSmart Agriculture. Thank you all for your time. I'll now hand it back to Krish to move us through the program.
Thank you, Ashu, for taking us through DigitalGreen's activities and also our partnership model on measurement, reporting, and verification of climate-smart activities, which indeed sounds exciting as a potential low-cost, scalable solution to capture climate-related data and then lead to a triple-win solution in the days to come. And now it is my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Abhishek Singh. Abhishek Singh is a senior Indian administrative officer in Government of India, leading an array of exciting initiatives. And he is the CEO of Digital India Corporation, President and CEO of National E-Governance Division, and CEO of My Government under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. He coordinates and leads projects related to DigiLocker, Umang, and the Geoinformatic, among a number of other initiatives that he is leading. His varied experiences, vast exposure and in diverse contexts, as well as knowledge and passion for technology-led solutions and improving governance is highly respected and appreciated by everyone. The Government of India has been making significant investments in application of digital technology to propel India's march towards a higher economic and social development goals. And we believe that our collective efforts will contribute to these national priorities. Let us welcome Abhishek Singh, sir. First, thanking you for accepting our invitation and inviting you to share your vision, your perspective around digitalization and application of technology, particularly in accelerating sustainable development outcomes in the agricultural sector. Sir, welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Krish, and thank you for giving me this platform to get to interact with the real practitioners and experts who have spent a lot of time in the field and have real experience and insights into what needs to be done for climate resilient agriculture or sustainable agriculture, as we may call it. Ashu in his presentation highlighted the key aspects and key interventions that are possible in order to achieve our objectives of not only increasing incomes of farmers, but also building a sustainable agriculture which takes into account all the challenges that we face of climate change, and how do you make it more rewarding in the long term. So when we look at and in what ways technology can play a role in enabling this. So we have been like technology, as we all know, has become a part and parcel of anything and everything that we do today. So how can the same technologies, how can the same solutions, the same apps, the same portals that we are building for everything else can be used for helping farmers who are in far greater need for getting the correct information, getting the right services, and by using technology to help them reduce their income costs, make the agriculture more sustainable, and also to increase their incomes. So a lot of interventions have been made, a lot of projects have been done. I am sure JEEViKA and RySS would be talking about it during the spotlight discussions. But when we look at the whole aspect and what has been the learning so far, we look at the basic challenge that comes in for is that most of our farmers, most of our agriculture fields are very small and marginal farmers. Almost 80% of our farm holdings are less than 2 hectares in size. So when we try to address such challenges, it becomes very clear that most farmers will not be able to invest in very high cost technologies. So what else can we do to ensure that they are made aware of what the challenges are and what the solutions are? So the easiest and the simplest way to address that challenge becomes to enable access to the right information to all farmers. And today the advantage in India is that we have is that most farmers do have a mobile phone. So can we think of building up a solution in which agri advisories and the best practices and what the farmers should do, what they should not do, can that basic information be made available on their phones in a language of their choice? So there have been numerous such examples that have been implemented. In fact, in Digital India Corporation itself, we implement a project called Integrated Information Dissemination System, IIDS that we call, which is now being rechristened as the Kisan Sarthi, in which what happens is it's being implemented in all the northeastern states and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and now we're scaling it up across the country. What happens is that the farmers are able to call a toll-free number and get advisories with regard to whatever if they have a crop has a disease, or they want some advisory with regard to what crop they should sow and how they can maximize their yield, where they should sell their crops. This information is offered to them through by linking them to the agri experts with a tie-up with the Krishi Vigyan Kendra under ICAR. And when this information is given, a lot of data analytics and a lot of information that is already available with us is made use of. For example, we already have the soil health card data that has been mapped across the country. So it's available at a very granular level. So like almost the soil health about every farm field is available with us. The IMD data is available with us with regard to the rainfall patterns, with regard to every year when the monsoon is going to come, when the rainfall will be there. So this data is available to us. We also have in most states land records digitized and also the data with regard to the crop patterns. So using all these data and building up a model, it's possible to give real-time advisories with regard to when the sowing should be done, when the harvesting should be done, and how much fertilizers should the farmer use, or what pesticide he should use, or if he needs any other expert advice to give him on his field by connecting him to an agri expert. So technology provides information availability to farmers. And then of course initiatives like eNAM have been made, wherein they connect the farmers to mandis and they're able to find out the prices of the prices in the local mandis of the products that they have, and they can take a call about when to sell, how to sell. So all this ensures that technology is used to give right agri advisories to farmers. And now another initiative which I would like to mention about is the initiative which has been implemented in Maharashtra, which is they have taken up a project on climate resilient agriculture, in which several technological interventions have been made. And the prime and the most critical of it is GIS mapping of all the land holdings, and not only the land holdings, they have built up a water resource map, because conserving water becomes a very prime requirement, a prime need when we are building sustainable agriculture. So with that, the village water balance framework has been created with a software analytics platform built in by IIT Bombay. And what it does is that it helps us to understand the actual status of natural resources, at what rate the natural resources are being depleted, how the water levels, groundwater levels are depleting, and what we should do to ensure water conservation. So when the government takes up works in the Manrega and other schemes for digging up ponds and creating water harvesting structures, one can actually decide in what part of the state that is required more, and how do you plan your such activities which are required for water conservation better, and to ensure that water conservation is done properly. Then another initiative again from Maharashtra which they did was that very often there are a lot of expertise which is available within farmers with regard to adopting better practices of using less water and ensuring that that the losses are minimized. And this knowledge that exists amongst the farmers is now being shared through in a peer-to-peer manner by developing an app called Farmer Field School app. They call it FFS app, and in which there are a lot of peer-to-peer learning is happening. And that kind of model is now we are working with them to try to see in what ways we can scale it up. Right now it's available in Marathi, and if it can be made available in other languages, so it can help more and more farmers. And across the country, farmers start sharing the best practices. That can become a big step in ensuring adoption of better practices amongst farmers which come from ground below. And then we also have been seeing the use of emerging technologies, the use of IoT devices, sensors which are put on various agri farms. In Punjab, there have been several examples which have been taken up, which measures like when should the pump be switched off, because very often we find that especially in paddy cultivation and all, a lot of water overflows and there is a wastage of groundwater as also damage to the crop. So sensors are installed which help in getting to precision agriculture and ensuring that the right level of water is used. The practices of drip irrigation which has been promoted by Ministry of Agriculture through various schemes to ensure optimal utilization of water is done. The water conservation becomes one of the critical aspects if we are talking about sustainable agriculture. So there will be numerous examples in which technology is playing this role in making this happen. In fact, Ministry of Agriculture has recently come up with a document which they call it IDEA. It's basically trying to promote enterprise architecture framework in the field of agriculture, bringing together all the agri-related data sets, farmer registers, the agro map of the country that we have, the databases with regard to the seeds, fertilizers, all the information that is available, databases with agriculture, and connecting them together through a uniform interface, so that people, software solution providers can build solutions on top of it. So that's kind of the agri stack that is being built up for providing a uniform application of technology and allowing more and more service providers to build applications on top of that. So that's again another initiative that's helping drive agriculture in adoption of technology in agriculture in a big way. So what I feel is that when we go ahead and as we look into the ways and means for improving agriculture operations, improving adoption of technology in this, the single most important thing that will be required is to ensure free and easy exchange of information. If JEEViKA has done stuff in Bihar, and if RySS is doing something in Andhra Pradesh, or the Pokhara project, the project on climate resilient agriculture in Maharashtra or other parts of the country, if we are doing so, if under the aegis of this forum or under the aegis of Digital India Corporation of any GT, if we can create a repository of such practices, such examples, such solutions, and most of these solutions are open source based, so adoption becomes easier. If we can make these solutions readily available for adoption across these states, and if we can disseminate this, then it will fast forward the adoption of this in the rural areas. The Kisan, we work very closely with ICR in also enabling this. So if there are any insights that I can get from this forum, and if there is anything that we can play a role in enabling faster adoption of this, then it will be a great service to what all we are doing. And it couldn't have been this kind of session or this kind of interaction couldn't have come at a better time, where we all are seeing the kind of damages and the kind of impact climate change and the erratic monsoons and all are having in agriculture. So once again, I think I am nearing the end of my time, so I would conclude here and look forward to hearing from the real experts with regard to what all is being done and in what ways we can collaborate further to take this movement and take this initiative forward.
Thank you so much, Abhishek ji. Thank you so much for this incredible keynote address. And I've captured some of the points that came to my mind straight away. Is you mentioned about to make technology affordable for farmers. You mentioned about making information accessible and available to all the farmers in the country, and very importantly, the need for free and easy exchange of information. And these are all very important points. And thank you for inviting us to work with you, and we'll surely get in touch with you, follow up with you, with your good offices on how we can take this forward. Your suggestions are well noted, and I'm sure that all of us will agree that the perspective and thoughts that you shared has given us enough ammunition, not just for today, but also for the rest of the days to come in taking this agenda forward. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It's now, we are moving on to the next session, which is the spotlight session for today, where Rikin Gandhi will be in conversation with Vijay Kumar sir and Balamurugan sir, as well as Dr. Purvi Mehta. It's my pleasure to introduce Rikin, and then Rikin will introduce other panelists. Rikin is the co-founder and CEO of DigitalGreen, with a master's in aeronautical and astronautical space engineering from MIT and a bachelor's in computer science from Carnegie Mellon University. Rikin began his career in Oracle, where he received patents for linguistic search algorithms that he helped develop. Later, he joined Microsoft Research India Technology for Emerging Markets team, where he researched ways to amplify the effectiveness of agricultural development globally. The time that Rikin spent in India's and with the rural communities changed his life. He developed a passion for helping the country's rural farmers, whom he saw as heroes. And more than a decade later, that passion has become his mission, his career. And in 2006, he co-founded what has become today as DigitalGreen. With his vision, passion, and penchant for scalable innovation, Rikin is one of the leading global voices and a much sought out thought leader in the ag tech space. We are so happy to have Rikin moderate and engage in this deep discussion with our panelists. It's given me pleasure to invite Rikin, and also to introduce and invite him to introduce our distinguished panelists and facilitate the discussions. Over to you, Rikin.
Thank you so much, Krish, and thank you for everyone for participating. Really appreciated Mr. Abhishek Singh's remarks. And it's such a coming together of our extended DigitalGreen community to have all of you to join us today. RySS in Andhra Pradesh and JEEViKA in Bihar have been such close partners to DigitalGreen over the years. They've been real inspirations for our whole work and have been investing in promoting climate-smart, sustainable livelihoods for rural farmers through a variety of means. While JEEViKA has been pioneering its efforts through a million-strong women SHG network to adopt sustainable practices, RySS has been investing in various landscape-based integrated approaches in Andhra Pradesh, focusing on building hyper-green zones for holistic development. But both have been really strong champions of ensuring that the communities themselves, community resource person cater especially, really is the focal point from how transformation has taken place and continues to at scale, and will lead to sustainable impact for the very long term. The key question for this particular panel session is, how can technology and data science help to accelerate the integrated approach of sustainable development by putting farmers and farmer-controlled data specifically at the center of climate-smart actions? And this is a topic that I've spoken at length with Mr. Vijay Kumar, Mr. Balamurugan, and Purvi with respect to really how do we build this agency as these challenges of climate are at the forefront. Before we jump into our discussion, let me introduce our distinguished panelist, Mr. T. Vijay Kumar. He is the Executive Vice Chairman of RySS, a government corporation for farmer empowerment, and an ex-official special chief secretary of the government of Andhra Pradesh, focused on natural farming, and is, of course, known for his long-standing work building from the work at the Society for Elimination of Rural Poverty, for which he was the CEO of, that ended up informing the development of the entire National Rural Livelihood Mission, and continues to do work both at a state, national, and global level in promoting the importance of community managed natural farming and the importance of social mobilization and the empowerment of women. Also would like to introduce Mr. Balamurgan. With over a decade of experience in the civil service with the Indian government. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Bihar Rural Livelihood Promotion Society, popularly known as JEEViKA, the poverty alleviation flagship program of the state of Bihar. He has peerless contributions to the social pension programs and community-led social systems, and has led to their digitization and development as a model for many other states. And he's also the Secretary cum Commissioner of the Self-Employment and Mission Director of the National Rural Livelihood Mission, leading skill development in rural areas for gainful self-employment in Bihar. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Purvi Mehta, who is the Deputy Director and Head of Asia for Agriculture at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She has her formal education, including a PhD from MS University, Tokyo University, and North Carolina State University. She has worked with the CGIAR as head of the International Livestock Research Institute in Asia and the head of the South Asia Biosafety Program. She's been closely associated with several agriculture and nutrition policy platforms in India, Southeast Asia, and Africa, and serves on several committees and advisory panels. She was the recipient of Agriculture Today Award in 2014, and her contributions are recognized in informing policies across South Asia, and has 2 books and over 50 publications to her credit. To jump into the session, I wanted to first invite Mr. Vijay Kumar, a very close collaborator and a real inspiration to me personally, and of course, our work at DigitalGreen more generally. He's been a pioneer, of course, in elevating natural farming at a policy level in India as well as globally. And you really inspired radical thinking and action in sustainable farming. What do you see as the key factors for accelerating climate smart agriculture? And what role do you think that digital and data, especially in the hands of the communities themselves, can enable? Over to you, Mr. Vijay Kumar.
Thank you, Rikin. Thank you for the generous introduction. And, I cherish our friendship and with you and with DigitalGreen. Having said that, I also wanted to comment on technology in general. I think technology also has been the problem in agriculture. We have oversimplified agriculture, and we have assumed that there are some neat solutions in the hands of experts, so that you send a WhatsApp and you get a beautiful solution, you implement the solution, and the farmers' problems are over. I think that's a very serious mistake we are making. We are forgetting the complexity of nature. We are forgetting that there is so much that we don't know. In fact, what is agriculture to a great extent depends on biodiversity below the soil, above the soil, and hardly 1% of what happens below the soil is known. So first of all those great fans of technology, trying to digitize something, trying to precisionize something, you are basically making a big mistake. So that is a word of caution that I would like to give to everyone here. So it's like, when long ago digitization happened, there was a concept of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So that is exactly what is happening in so-called smart agriculture or precision agriculture, trying to assume that we know what is happening. Nature is way complex, and we are in a terrible crisis. So we have to transform our thinking and not assume that there are some neat solutions and some great experts have that solution. And then, just through digital mechanism, the solution will go to a farmer. I think we are making a big mistake. That's the first warning that I would like to give. And it calls for a transformation in our own thinking. And is technology in the hands of farmers? Are farmers only at the receiving end? We are still looking at digital technology as an extractive technology. Okay, let's capture what the farmer is doing. But farmer is not benefiting from this. So unless we have a very different view of digital. I'm now separating the overall science and technology of agriculture from the digital part. So even in the digital part, I really like DigitalGreen's approach of empowering communities to use this. Digitalization should not mean extraction, should not be one-sided. Now, having said that, if I have another 2 minutes, Rikin, to answer your question, or
Sure.
should I pass it on?
No, yeah, you can respond.
Okay. No, because I wanted to set the record right. Otherwise, everybody is thinking, even I heard saying that, okay, some great chap has a solution. You just send a message and the answer will come. Not at all. I think we are making a very serious mistake. So in terms of how scaling up happened, even now the mainstream agriculture system is opposed to what I'm doing. Even though everybody knows that the business as usual agriculture is going to lead us to ruin. The climate change has accelerated so much that I'm very pessimistic. I feel that whatever I'm saying now, whatever I'm doing now should have been done 20 years ago. But in spite of that, in Andhra Pradesh, government support has been critical in both the ownership, the advocacy, and financing. Then behavior change of farmers. There's a lot of de-addiction that is required. Relearning. Somehow, the previous dominant model had de-recognized the knowledge of farmers. We actually have to give them confidence. No, your knowledge is important. What you're seeing every day in your fields is important. So this behavior change of farmers is what is critical. And the behavior change happens through innovative farmers and the great social capital that has been created in Andhra Pradesh and in Bihar. So the women self-help groups network is what is critical. So the digital technology, which has helped us a lot, is basically what we have been doing in partnership with DigitalGreen is the video dissemination. Is how does because it's knowledge intensive agriculture, not some expert intensive agriculture. It is knowledge intensive agriculture. So the role of digital technology in behavior change, to the extent it capacitates the human connection between farmers, not through some anonymous advice floating on the WhatsApp, and the connection between the women farmers. So this is what is critical. I think I've taken too much time. I'll stop now.
No, appreciate your remarks, and that's extremely well taken, and certainly something that we take to heart. At DigitalGreen, we've certainly been very inspired by the work of RySS and of JEEViKA in flipping the traditional paradigm of top-down extension.
Absolutely.
As you said.
I would really like to caution people thinking that, some experts can give them solutions. Not at all. Farmers are gods, according to me. Farmers are the real experts. If we don't recognize that, we'll only be making mistakes.
Totally agree. And yeah, I think in part the challenges that we face today are due to some of those mistakes that have happened in the past. So we certainly don't want to repeat. And I totally agree that we really want to see how does technology enable farmer voice and agency, and not be extracted, as you said. So now over to Mr. Balamorgan. From your experience working with thousands of self-help groups of women in Bihar, how do you believe we can ensure that the most marginalized, especially women and landless, who are still often the least connected when it comes to smartphones, can still be empowered with that type of decision-making power and agency to control their own data and connect with one another to share climate smart information and services to unlock their own potential? Over to you.
Thank you, Rikin. Respected Vijay Kumar sir, Abhishek sir, Krish and Purvi. Good to see you, Purvi, also after a long time. How much time do I have, Rikin?
Like 5 minutes.
5 minutes. See, so to answer that particular question, how the communities are empowered. Actually, again, I'm going to say what almost the same kind of answer only from what Vijay has said. So what we did, our example of DigitalGreen, how we empowered community to make their own videos and dissemination. That partnership started in 2010 and 11, 12. That is one best example of using technology to help communities, poor communities, particularly, for example, in JEEViKA, most of the families in general in Bihar, more than 90% of the farmers are small and marginal, and our clients, our members are, most of them are poor. They don't have access to this kind of technology. That's where the community institutions play a very important role, and then community resource persons play a very important role by giving access to this kind of technologies. I said that example of DigitalGreen, this pico projectors that helped in a big way in reaching out community members and dissemination of information and also empowering them. And when we started again with help of BMGF in Purnia through farmer producer organization, again using the technology, how the market intelligent information has been shared with community. Actually, it's see, again, there's no need for each and every member to have mobile phone to have access to the knowledge and information. That is the power of community, because they are working in groups. The information is disseminated to VRP and also 1 or 2 members who are having access. That is again spreads to all the community members. That is how we are working. And in fact, right now, the penetration of mobile is also not a big problem. Again, most of them are having access. Maybe that may not be a smart phone, but they are having access. And our experience in one more intervention, we call it, we did it in Gaya and also in Madhubani. That experience also shows by involving community, empowering them, that gap can be addressed. We did the sustainable livelihoods and then adaptation to climate change, that SLAC program, where all the components of climate-smart agriculture was done. But again, we need to calibrate our approach and then understand the nitty-gritties. And then when you go to the field, there are so much factors which plays out. That's what Vijay sir said. And then we need to be cautious, and then we need to really understand those aspects, then only we can succeed. I stop here, and then I'll be happy to answer more questions later on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogan. I really appreciate that. And over to Dr. Purvi Mehta. Purvi, the impressive impact at scale that has taken place in Bihar and Andhra Pradesh has already been incorporated into the strategies of Niti Aayog, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, and of course the Ministry of Agriculture to various extents. Given that great work and the growing agri-tech ecosystem that we are seeing, and initiatives like Mr. Singh shared about the Ministry of Agriculture's Indian Digital Ecosystem of Agriculture idea, or AgriStack, how do you see digital technologies and data strengthening the link between farmers, policymakers, and other actors across the ag ecosystem, particularly in the face of the increasingly rapid and highly variable changes taking place because of climate change? And what role do you see philanthropy taking in this space as well?
Thank you, Rikin. And I'll just build on what the other speakers, Abhishek ji, Vijay Kumar ji, Balaji has spoken about. I think, to really bring in the whole aspect of climate-induced hazards, and, it's the way it is really disproportionately harming, especially small-scale producers, right? And how do we mitigate the fact that this is single-handedly really becoming a threat to our ambitions for transforming agriculture systems? I think to your question, Rikin, it is throughout the value chain, right? From production perspective. So if we see the key strategic goals of agriculture value chains, production, and productivity, if you look at the incomes, you look at inclusiveness of smallholder farmer, women, and so forth, and agriculture's ultimate goal, which is also apart from income, nutrition. The climate-related risks are actually affecting all four, and the technologies can really help as one of the key solutions for all four. I really liked Vijay Kumarji's point, and I'd really like to emphasize that the DigitalGreen's feedback loop mechanism, where you are not only taking technology to the farmers but also bringing technologies and lessons from the farmers. So I think that in that kind of a loop, farmers have always had their own mitigation strategy. Crop diversification, for example, commodity diversification at farmers' field has always been one of the key mitigation strategy. Why do the farmer, not rely, a smallholder farmer especially, not rely on a single crop? They have couple of crops. That's a mitigation strategy. If one thing gets flooded by rain, at least the other one is there. If one thing doesn't fetch good market price, the other one will. The good mix of crop and livestock, right? Almost every livestock farmer in this country is not just livestock farmer. It is also a crop farmer who happens to keep a livestock. These are all mitigation strategy. How do we bring some of those lessons from the ground to the mainstream is going to be very important. But I think to answer your question and to build on what has been said, one of the major gaps is to really have very clear understanding. We talk about inequalities. I think there are a lot of inequalities apart from, climate, of course, affecting small farmer much more. Climate, of course, affecting women farmers much more, all of that. But there are some other innate inequalities we need to really bring our attention to. For example, over 70% of the global efforts in climate adaptation and climate mitigations are actually, concentrated on diagnosing the problem and not solving the problem. So I think there is a lot of technological advancement, or there is a lot of effort that's required, right? If we see the total climate financing in the world, right? The various large organizations, banks have come up with climate financing. The total climate financing, only about 2% of the total climate financing is actually coming to smallholder farmer. Now, if we see this country, or this region, South Asia, and climate, again, I want to point out that is a regional issue and not a country issue, right? If flood comes in Ganga, Bangladesh gets as affected as, they don't know the boundaries. So it's a regional issue, right? And, 4 countries in this region, South Asia alone, make it to the top 10 most vulnerable countries in the world on climate. So we really, really need to do something about that. My last thing, Rikin, is whatever we do on climate, let's really package our information. Let us really, from a farmer's perspective, number one is, what does a farmer need to know about climate adaptation? Let's not be too bogged down with global data and all of that. If I am a farmer in Purnia district and a member of a JEEViKA that Balaji leads, right? What is it that I need to know about climate adaptation and how does it affect my income? Number 2 is, why should I know about climate? I mean, SDGs and all of these things are very good to be spoken about in offices in Delhi. If for farmer, why do I have, what is the incentive for becoming more climate smart? I think we need some very, very clear messaging and prioritizing of some of these things.
Oh, that's very relevant. Appreciate those remarks, Purvi. Just one final question to each of the 3 of you, if I could ask, which is, you've all spoken about the importance of ensuring that the farmer is really at the center, and that it's not, something is not done to them or something is not extracted from them, but rather they're really the focal point of being able to leverage digital technologies for their own, and for being able to also connect with perhaps their own networks, building on the type of community resource persons and women's self-help group networks that JEEViKA and RySS have developed and mobilized so impressively over the years at such scale. So I just wanted to ask one final question to each of you, which is, if you had a magic wand to leverage digital and data for these community members to be able to be empowered in a bottom-up way, to enable them to address these challenges of climate change and move to a more nature-positive form of agriculture, what role do you see it playing? First, over to Mr. Vijaykumar.
Thank you, Rikin. If I had a magic wand, I would say I would like to go back 20 years and start the work 20 years ago. I am afraid we are very late. The climate change has intensified so much. And I was in Rome last week for the UN Food System Summit. And the kind of picture that emerges is very scary. So first and foremost is that we need a kind of agriculture, farming, which protects farmers' livelihoods from day one, also enables the farmer to produce nutritious food, so protects our health, and is making at the same time the soil resilient to climate change. And so we need to have all the three wins happening at the same time, not that one will happen at the cost of the other. So to do that, definitely we need to empower farmers through knowledge, by connecting. So the only magic wand is, can we reduce the learning curve? Can we make farmers more resilient in terms of knowledge? How do they intuitively, their great knowledge and understanding from the crop, from nature, how does it enable them to come out of this? Because we need the help of farmers, the pastoralists, the fisher community, all of them moving together in nature positive agriculture is not just for them, for all of us. So the only dream I have is, what is that magic wand which can reverse the warming of the planet? Can we have technologies? Can we have those technologies which can cool the planet safely, at the same time continuing to build on the livelihoods of the people? I think from whatever I know, that those kind of technologies are available. And this is something which gives me great pleasure in introducing these safe technologies through the farmers. So the role of digital technology is, can this knowledge dissemination, which can lead all of us to a safety path. Otherwise, I think we are in a very serious mess. I just can't, I'm not exaggerating. Maybe I'm underestimating the crisis that exists. So yes, technology has a role to play. Technology as a servant of the people, not as their master. So if we are able to change our mindset on that, then I think we'll be better off. Thank you, Rikin.
Thank you. Mr. Balamorgan.
Not an easy question. Yeah, see, again, building on what Vijay sir said, so based on our experience in the last 5 years, so as far as, knowledge dissemination, I'll just concentrate on that particular part. So we did everything. I talked about DigitalGreen, sending SMS, calling through phones, mobile application, IVRS system with some partners, and then we have flip charts, whatnot. We have all the material, pamphlets, videos, jingles, whatnot. We have everything, every possible IC materials. Somewhere, what is missing is, we need to reach out. We have VRPs, everything is there. I think I'm not sounding in a negative way. We have done everything possible. So the last mile connection, in the sense, we need to put together all these things and then reach these communities in a sustainable way. Because the only way is to empower them, educate them about technologies. As far as solutions are concerned, I think they have enough solutions at their level. We need to facilitate. We need to concentrate on three basic aspects that, as Sir said, we need to keep soil healthy, and then we need to help facilitate poor farmers in the form of package practices, input services, and then market linkage is where the technology can play a very, very important role. Still, despite all these years of development, as far as post-harvest technologies and then the wastage is concerned, is huge. That is also affecting our climate. Affects everyone, but these are all the things. Even whatever they get, they are not able to get that premium if they are doing organic farming. All these things. That's where there's no single line answer for this. It's going to be a comprehensive, long haul effort which one has to put, and then CBOs, community-based organizations, having unique position to do all these things as far as providing all these kind of services through farmer producer organizations, there were village organizations through ERPs, and we have that network in all villages, and on top of it, they can also get support in the form of credit linkages and then all kind of supports. So I think the CBO network, we are in partnership with RySS, and that's what this is what we are trying to do, and at scale. That is one strength of CBO, and I stop here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Purvi, if you could speak to this question, and also maybe relate to a question or point that was raised in the chat box, which is, how has this whole COVID pandemic sort of hindered or accelerated some of what's needed in your view?
Yeah, in terms of the magic wand, I think I'd have my magic wand shine on a couple of things. Number one is I'd really put emphasis on systems and not just a particular commodity or a particular part of the value chain. So the entire system, again, emphasizing on crop, livestock, everything. Number two, I think very similar to what Mr. Bala said, economic empowerment and sort of best price realization, making agriculture more profitable, which by default will help the farmer adapt to the ecological vulnerability better. When we talk about climate change, we often do not link it with markets. We do not link it, we link it more from production side, but better economic standards of a farmer and profitability in agriculture will help as a buffer to these climate vulnerability. In terms of the COVID pandemic, I think it has been a double whammy, right? It has of course been a major challenge. We know the impact of it on nutrition level. But from a very digital perspective, in 15 months' time in India, for example, in one country where we see, and Mr. Abhishek Singh spoke about that also, the internet connectivity in rural areas have gone up by 13%. Internet connectivity in urban area growth has been 4%. So while there has been a lot of challenges, some of the technologies, and I often say that digital technology, as if it was vaccinated right from the beginning and pandemic did not affect it. It actually brought its way. One of the things I always feel, Rikin, is in a subsidized systems in developing countries where the farmers have expected fertilizer and water and electricity and everything to be subsidized, no farmer has ever asked for phone bills to be subsidized. That's because they see a value in having a phone in their hands, and they see a value in how digital technology is helping them pre-production and post-production. So I think while it has brought in a lot of challenges, it has also brought in a lot of trust in some of these technologies which has come to rescue a farmer, again, as one of the important tools in their toolbox, not as a silver bullet. So.
Cool. No, yeah, totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Purvi, for those remarks. And with that, I'd like to thank Mr. Vijay Kumar, Mr. Balamurgan, and Dr. Purvi Mehta for participating in the Spotlight discussion. Really appreciate your remarks and really excited that taking this work forward with all of you. From here, I'll hand over to Shreya to lead into the next session. Shreya?
Thank you, Rikin. Thank you, Rikin, Vijay Kumar sir, Balamurgan sir, and Purvi for the wonderful and enriching discussion. And I can say for myself, we're inspired to use our collective magic wand to move the climate smart agriculture agenda forward. I'm Shreya Agarwal. I'm the Director of Strategy at DigitalGreen. And now that we have listened to our keynote speakers, our panelists, we will move to draw lessons and thoughts from our participants who are from governments, philanthropy, research organizations, multilateral agencies, and of course, practitioners. For this, we have set up 3 breakout groups focusing on specific topics. The first group will focus on engendering climate smart agriculture. This group will be facilitated by Tini Sahani. She's the CEO of the Aga Khan Foundation. Working Group 2 will be looking into AgTech and data-driven solutions to mainstream climate smart agriculture. This group will be facilitated by Stuart Collis, Senior Program Officer, Digital Agriculture at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then Working Group 3 will be focusing on enabling ecosystem for technology and data solutions for mainstreaming climate smart agriculture. And this group will be facilitated by Hisham Mundo. He is the Chief Advisor at the Environmental Defense Fund. And this group will remain in the main room, and this will be live streamed. So each working group will get approximately 15 minutes to collate participant feedback and inputs. And we will use a platform called Jamboard to document some of the insights. Namita, my colleague, will post a link to this Jamboard session on chat right now. Once the working group session is completed, we will come back to the plenary and the facilitators will share the key messages and learnings from the group. We've already pre-assigned participants to these different groups, but just in case someone's left out, please reach out to me and I'm sure we can do that. So with that, I think we can go ahead and open up the rooms. So I see that people are moving to the different groups. And Hisham, I see that you're here and I will be a facilitator for our breakout room 3. So the people we have in the main room will continue to be part of this group.
Okay. Can you shift me to group 1? I wanted to be with Tini.
Sure, absolutely. So Hisham, you can get started and Vijay Kumar sir, I'll just do that right now.
Sure. Well, thanks everyone for joining in. I'm not entirely sure if this was voluntary or this was engineered. So either which way, thank you for being part of this group. There's, if you've had a chance to go through the briefing note that had come prior to this event, there were some points that were mentioned there. I'm going to try and make sure we cover them, but in a slightly different way. What I thought I'd do is based on what we've heard so far from the various panelists, I wanted to make maybe 2 or 3 statements, which I'm going to keep as deliberately provocative just to generate a debate and insight. So if that's all right with you, I want to start with the whole debate on climate smart agriculture and the investments that are being made on technology, and that's why we are sitting here today, right? Agriculture is a inefficient sector in the sense of the amount of food losses and the number of middlemen that are there, and the difference between prices at a farm and prices on. Is it accurate and safe to say that the majority of technology investments that are going on smart ag are addressing the supply chain inefficiencies and not addressing the other benefits that we seek to address, the climate benefits, the income benefits, the social development benefits like nutrition of the underlying community? And this is a bit of a odd way of trying to facilitate it, I know, because I don't know how many of you folks are there, but would just love to hear perspectives and ideas from anyone really. And you can put it in chat, share, they can put it in chat if they want, right? Or would love to, hear you, and would love it even more to see you.
So
Go for it.
Hello, I'm Eliane Belladero. I'm the Executive Director for Sustainability in the Digital Age. I think you made a really important point, and I think working at the farmer level is more complex. And so I think a lot of the work on digitalization upstream has been much easier. And because it's easier just to work on technical things, it's been easier to focus there. I think working on the farmer side requires working a lot on the social, the technical, and the scientific all together, and requires more multidisciplinary engagement. Right. So it really requires a level of support that the other steps don't necessarily need. So more complexity requires more effort. And so I think investments haven't been there yet at the level they need to be. And I think that's the critical level for climate resilience and food security and nutrition to be really scaled. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
Then can I ask a follow-on question? And I'm not sure where you're based or which countries your organization operates in, but is that a problem only in a context of a country like India, where you have a large number, a gigantic number of really smallholder farms, or is this a more common problem across the world?
So I'm currently based in Canada. I'm from Rwanda, and I work globally. I do a lot of work. Vijay Kumar and I have been looking at scaling community natural farming in Africa, and one of the things I realize is that the level of I'd say it's an issue everywhere. It's an issue in North America in terms of marginalized communities, indigenous communities, in terms of how they can engage. It's an issue everywhere in the global South, but I think it's the area that, in terms of levers of transformation and disruption, is the most important to engage in if we are to achieve the SDGs by 2030.
Thanks. No, that's really useful. Curious to check if there's any other comments. Otherwise, I was going to move on to provocative statement number 2. All right, let's move to that. So, and I mean this, Mr. Vijay Kumar is a wonderful person, but I wanted to place on the table that Mr. Vijay Kumar was wrong on the technology side, by which I mean, when you have a situation of large, complex, small farmer holding, small land holdings, diversity of ecosystem, really complicated supply chains and politics around it, there is actually a disproportionately large role for technology to be able to try and make sense of it all. Now, he's right in the sense that you can't go in with a simplistic approach to it. And he's right that you can't take a model from one country and go to take it to another country. Forget about one country to another country. You can't take it from one part of one state in India to another state and apply those formulas. But is there any way out of this beyond technology? Is there any other route that we can possibly explore?
Can I respond? I have some 1 or 2 points.
Please.
Murli.
Please go ahead.
See, first of the paradigm one we have to make is that farming is not done by individual farmers. They are done by microbes. They are done by the nature. It is done by the nature. Photosynthesis. Very good. It is not done by us. It is done by the nature. So once that is clear to us, then we understand what can be done about it. That's one. The second is that the discoveries, we thought men were farmers for a long time. And we worked with the solutions around educating or working with men. And our discovery is that the men is actually women. It's actually the women who are doing or helping the microbes to do the farming. Then we thought farmers who own the land were doing it earlier. Now we discovered that the farm workers who are working on the farm are doing the farming. It's not the landowners. Similarly, we thought farmers are producing for themselves, the farm. But we discovered that they are producing for the consumers. So we don't know whether they actually just produce for it, for the heck of it, or they want to consume, they want to help others to consume. We want to say, we want to talk about monocrops, and we said, no, we are multiple crops, not just multi-layered crops, not just, so every piece is subjected to customization and realization to transcending what we earlier thought is working. And earlier we thought we work with adults, only farmers do understand. But now we are thinking children can help us, youth can help us, schools can help us. So there's a variety of things that are happening. So technology has to be customized and work in tandem with all of this. So that kind of adaptability is required for the technology. And somebody has to make this happen, So that's a critical dimension. The technology, if you don't understand this in this way, we may go wrong. Yeah, I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sudhanshu, you were coming in earlier. I don't know if you're still.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm Sudhanshu from Humanitarian Aid International. And let me tell you how I understood what Mr. Vijay Kumar said, because I tend to agree with him. We ourselves work a lot on localization. And I think, yes, no one is against the technology because that provides a solution. However, the simplification of technology is much more important. Means if I give example of soil health card, that's really brilliant concept. But when you talk to a majority of marginal farmers, they may have the soil health card, but don't understand what does it mean. So someone needs to explain it to them that if this is a particular nitrogen level, then what they ought to do. No. So I think 1 year ago, a climate expert was talking to me, a British guy, and he said, when I was traveling to India and I talked to many local NGOs asking their climate perspective, and they were clueless. And I was shocked. And I thought I would be shocked had they answered you adequately, because the entire climate discourse has been made so sophisticated, so confined to a few experts, that it is not understood, or it has not been made relevant for majority of those who are facing consequences of the climate change, the global warming, and farmers are definitely one of them. In addition to, I think, making technology relevant and comprehensible for them, I think technology should also help them to go beyond that, because now they are facing disasters with much more frequency, intensity, and bigger scale. And this technology should help them, a nexus approach, development humanitarian nexus approach. Technology should help them to understand that these manifestations, these disasters, what are the major reasons for them? And then gradually it's not, and of course the farmers cannot all alone resolve the consequences. So bigger actors also have to appear in the picture. But the entire discourse has to be simplified and make the farmers understood the technology and also the framework of it. Over.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks, appreciate that. Just by way of clarification, I must repeat that what I said at the start was I was making deliberately provocative statements just to generate debate, not that I disagreed with Mr. Vijay Kumar. Abhay, I see your hand up. Would you like to come in, please?
Sure. Okay, let me see if I can also turn on my video. Okay. Yeah, so no, thanks for this provocative statement. I think that also triggered some thoughts at our end. One of the things that I would like to put forward is I think technology, as we have been talking, it's not the magic wand. It has to be customized, it has to be simplified. But I think one of the things that when you have a business which wants, revenues early on, and a farmer who wants to technology to adopt and then learn about it and wants that lag time, I think that's where the discontent happens, especially with the private sector throwing new ideas and new technology to them and they're not ready to adopt. I always take a, example, if tomorrow as somebody says your salary is coming in, Bitcoins, we'll be the first one to say no to that. So similar for a farmer, you just tell them if advisory is coming through and you adopt it, it's tough. So I think one of the things that we have to focus on is the social capital. I think that was also raised at one point in time. The cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, or the informal groups, I think if they adopt technology and be future ready, it's easy then to trickle down that innovation down the line. So we need to have that lag time and adoption time for farmers to go through it and adopt it. Secondly, give them options. Give them options to take A, B, or C. Just don't throw something and say this is the right way forward. For just again to give you an example, one of the projects that I was doing in Nepal way back, just to digitize the payments in a dairy value chain. The idea that we threw was that there's an option for you to put your money in a wallet, in a bank account, or withdraw the cash, or you can distribute in all three of them. Give them the choice to learn and play around with it, and then go around with it. And third thing I think, which is again is important, is there are mitigation measures that are there, that are driven by traditional knowledge, that are driven by the socio-economic context in which they are living. The technology solutions should build on them as a solution and then bring in technology and how to simplify them. Again, just for example, if somebody, if you go to Rajasthan, they are not agrarian. So if there is a drought, they basically rely on their cattle to sell it off in that season. These are mitigation measures, right? Now build on these mitigation measures, think what they have been thinking by buying that cattle, turn it into a technology solution, and then see how we can simplify that for them. So I think these are some of the things that we have to think through. Technology is just a means. Let's not make it the end of everything, is what I want to forward.
No, thanks. That's appreciate that, Lauren. I think that the point that you made right at the end is probably the best summary of this question, which is it's a means and it's not the end of the all. And what I'm hearing everyone saying is we need to make technology simple, but we must not make it simplistic. So that's the second one. The third one, and Shed, do we have 4 more minutes or do we need to get back? Okay, so my last one was, and it builds on the points of that Abhay made and previous speakers as well, which is how do we organize ourselves as a community to generate that social capital? And where I'm coming from is, right now, if you go to a typical Kisan and you say, I want you to do X, Y, Z, because that will reduce emissions or that will secure soil health, or that they will turn around very justifiably, and it's more likely she than a he, given the demographics now in India, and say, I need to feed my family, that's my priority, so I need to get that right. And if therefore all of the work that we're doing around, climate smart agriculture, technology for farmers, etc., if we organize it around raising farmer incomes, will that generate the kind of environment, the kind of broad-based support that is going to be needed to get farmers to adopt, to get policymakers to be interested, and to address a desperate requirement of the country to raise farmer incomes? I wonder what people think of that. Because right now we're talking emissions, right now we're talking about something that may or may not happen by 2030 or 2040 or, doomsday scenarios then, but can we look at farmer incomes in the here and now?
And just quickly, I just think farmer incomes can't go up unless we have climate resilient agriculture. And so the urgency of increasing income requires building resilience. And this is why regenerative practices linked to data-driven scaling that de-risks scaling funding is critical, and the urgency. So I see the interconnection.
And I wasn't suggesting it as a conflict. So I get you on the interconnection. I think it's what are we trying to sell? Are we trying to sell climate resilient agriculture? Or are we trying to sell increased rural prosperity through climate resilient agriculture? That's, I think, the starting point. Anyone else? Because otherwise we're beginning to see warning signs about us having to move back to the main group. Okay, then let us call it a day then. Thank you so much. I guess we're all staying here, Shreya, and waiting to go back.
That's right. Yeah. So I think others will be joining us.
Okay.
From the other rooms. You have about a minute to go.
I'm trying to figure out if I should have tried to slip in a provocative question, statement number 5, but I ran out of provocative statements. So
I see that Prachi has her hand up. So.
Oh, hi, Prachi. Come. Would you like to?
Hey, hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much. That was a really informative session. I just wanted to ask, so I'm working with, Aga Khan Foundation, and I wanted to ask, I'm working with the SPC here, and I wanted to confirm, how do we link the farmers with the technology? Like, how do we, people do use, like we do village visits and they do use the technology, they have smartphones, but what do we do? How do we make that linkage? Like, is there an app, or how do we make them? And that's right, that multi-cropping should be done, but it's not done. So it's also about capacity building, and knowledge should be they should be made more knowledgeable about this. But what exactly do we need to do? Like, what should be the way forward? That's all I wanted to ask.
That's a really good question. I'm wondering who could venture an answer. Oops, okay. Prachi, I'll try and find some way of getting you a response to that. Okay, I think we have the broader group joining us back, but thank you so much.
Welcome back, everyone. I think everybody is going to be here momentarily as the breakout rooms close. I hope you had great discussions. My name is Alicia Miller. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Partnerships at DigitalGreen, and I've been so pleased to be able to participate and learn from all of our distinguished speakers and guests today. We are running a little over time at the moment, or a little behind. We'll do our best to catch up, but I would just encourage everyone to stay for our final speaker. You don't want to miss it. And I know we all want to hear what would happen in the breakout groups. So I'm going to turn it over to each of our moderators to give us just a very brief summary of some high points from your discussion. We have the Jamboard to record the other rich discussion. But I want to start with Tingi Sani. Could we go to your group first? Just give us 1 to 2 minutes, and I'd encourage others to feel free to add on the chat as well if you want to make sure something is heard by the broader group.
So I think in terms of facilitating access and for center staging the role of women, I think the group agreed that the self-help group platform is a very powerful platform to kind of empower women and to give women the confidence to actually share, practices that they might have implemented on the ground. Also, the need to identify champion farmers and for those champion farmers to actually share the information going forward. There was not that much of time. I mean, we're running a bit out of time. On the farmer producer companies, how do we, increase those structures? The champion farmers could, in a way, be those members, and, there could be market differentiation was also spoken about. How do we make markets more friendly to women? How do we also co-create, say, digital markets with women at the center, with women farmers at the center? Because, often they are not able to access markets. So a co-creation of a digital market was also discussed. And I just request, Namita to kind of mention on the last point, because there was a point on that which we then moved to the third question. So Namita, because I can't see the board, right? And I didn't take all the notes.
Not a problem. I think what people also felt was that there could be more collaborations with international organizations, for instance, who are already working on gender digital divide and developing solutions. But the more collaborative work can happen in developing solutions more specific to particular contexts, because certain things already exist, and it could just make adaptation and even like creation of different technologies easier and quicker. So that's, I think, more collaboration with like global organizations as well.
And I think just one more point was that, how could self-help groups also now say involve the adolescent youth in really taking this forward. So a partnership, say, with schools in the area, say self-help groups who have practiced sustainable farming practices, could they take some sessions in these schools? And likewise, could the teachers also take this, so that this knowledge is also going to the next generation? So I think that was also something that was discussed, that self-help groups also need to move beyond their comfort zone. So I'd say the platform of self-help groups, the market differentiation, co-creating a digital marketplace with women were things mentioned to empower women to practice sustainable farming, and then also to access better markets.
Excellent summary. Thank you for hitting those high points, and I'm glad we've captured it on the Jamboard. I'm excited to hear about the next group, given how rich the first discussion was. Over to you, Stuart Collis.
Yes, thank you. So our group did a round robin just on sort of addressing different aspects of these questions in terms of what benefits can farmer-centric data systems have, not just to farmers, but other stakeholders. I think we captured just a small sampling of some of those. Some spoke about, the need for intermediaries to be involved in sort of this translation of, both top-down sort of technology and data and research, but then bottom-up, farmer data, and how do we sort of bridge those two, and the importance of intermediaries and the role they play. So that could be sort of through a self-help group, it could be through a digital extension agent, it could be through an agribusiness of some kind, but just that we often assume that there's sort of a direct connection between platforms and systems and farmers, but there's other actors within that that data value chain, if you will. So, if we think about data as similar to the commodity itself, that there's a value chain of actors that play a role there. I think the other group of stakeholders was, and this is mentioned in the plenary, was the researchers. And how do you sort of combine, this concept of great research happening that around new technologies, but how do you sort of combine that with farmer knowledge, farmer information, testing it in the field? So I think that's a really important bridge to build, is between those two types of groups. And with DigitalGreen's work with JEEViKA and CISA, that's an example of how do we go about that. The ground data that's being collected about farmers can really inform models. It can inform, policies around what's working and what isn't working. And then another area we spoke about was around finance and the value of this type of data for understanding risk. So whether that be talking about credit or talking about insurance. That's where you start to get to this sort of valuation of data. And that leads us down the path towards, what are the incentives for sharing data? It's not just, asking people and being extractive, as again was mentioned in the plenary, but there must be a value there for a farmer to both collect quality data and share that data. And so I think, this idea of, valuation around data, which is going to be different for different actors, of course, across that value chain. But how do we design incentives? I think that's sort of a very rapid summary of the discussion. And hopefully, I think we have some more points captured on the Jamboard. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart. And I'll do a quick summary at the end before we transition, but over to you, Hisham Mandol.
Sure, thanks. So we had our session in the form of a set of provocative hypothetical statements that we picked up from what previous speakers had said. And here's a quick summary of what we landed on. One is that technology has to be simple, but not simplistic in terms of we need to acknowledge the complexities of the situation that we're in. This is also, by the way, not an India-centric problem. This appears to be a problem in many parts of the world. The second is when you're seeing climate tech and climate solutions for tech solutions for agriculture policies, filter off two things. One is that the agriculture and food sector is an inefficient sector in terms of middlemen, in terms of wastages, etc. And a lot of the effort is going around reducing those inefficiencies. What we need to ensure is that when we're talking about climate smart agriculture, we're talking about farmer incomes, we're talking about the social development indicators that piece of work, most notably nutrition, and the climate benefits. And don't get seduced by anything that's techie as that makes it necessarily climate smart. The third thing that we talked around was on how do you generate social capital. Remember, our group was to try and figure out how to scale this, and you can only scale when you generate social capital. And our proposition going in is usually this is how we will build climate resilient agriculture for you. And through that, you will get higher incomes. And I think a different entry point to generate that social capital is to say, we as a community are here to raise farmer incomes. And the way to do it is to do it through climate resilient agriculture. I think that might generate more social capital than otherwise. Thank you. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much. So I want to make sure we leave as much time as possible for our keynote speaker, but just a few things that jumped out at me from across these presentations: the importance of farmer-centric co-creation and community engagement to build social capital for resilience in the face of climate change. I also want to point out this idea of the valuation of data and the data value chain. How do we make sure that farmers actually benefit from the value that their data is worth in the marketplace? And then finally, just want to point out this idea of thinking about how to put the woman at the center of the digital marketplace. I think that's a really compelling question. I can't summarize everything. We want to make sure we have time for our very exciting final speaker. He has kindly allowed me to simply introduce him as JS, but I said that I would make an attempt at pronouncing his name. I'm going to invite Mr. J. Satyanarayana. He served in the Indian Administrative Service for 37 years, retiring in 2014 as the Secretary for the Department of IT, Government of India. He's also served part-time as chairperson of the Unique Identification Authority of India. He's currently serving as Chief Advisor, C4IR, World Economic Forum and advisor and member, Advisory Board, Global Forum on Cyber Expertise for the Netherlands. At the World Economic Forum, he is supporting shaping programs responsible for the deployment of emerging technologies in multiple sectors: agriculture for innovation, first healthcare, AI for smart cities, and data economy. He was involved in shaping several policies, including the National Electronics Policy in 2012, the National Cybersecurity Policy in 2013, and he's chaired several governmental committees on digital agriculture. I want to welcome him. JS, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Alicia, for that nice introduction, and good morning and good evening to all the distinguished participants. Really, I think the stalwarts of the subject are all there, including my dear old friend Vijay Kumar. In fact, we worked together and know each other for 4 decades, and several other familiar faces. Thank you. And it was interesting for me to listen to the summaries of all the 3 breakout sessions, and some very interesting keywords I pick up. For instance, the challenges of the farm sector, raising farmers' income, ecosystem approach, value chain, data value chain, farmer centricity, and end of the day, all this thing in a very simple, if not simplistic manner. So I think these are all great ideas. So let me share some of my work in this space, and through a presentation. I'll request Krish to share the presentation, please. Thank you. So with so many ideas, I'm adding one more idea to the discussion here. So this is about India digital ecosystem of agriculture, a major IT architecture for the entire agriculture sector for the country. And the theme here is transforming farming. And I have looked at it from the perspective of using of the emerging technologies, which is called AI for AI. I'll talk briefly about it. And the relation of both idea and the AI for AI. AI for AI stands for AI for agriculture innovation. And how do they relate both to CSA would be in the next few minutes, the theme of my talk. So next one, please. So these are too familiar to us, all these challenges which have been discussed in several forums and brought out extensively and exhaustively by the Committee on Doubling Farmers' Income in India, or DFI, which went into various aspects and had a lot of interactions. And while there are several problems here need to be addressed, one key thing that's related to seminar is the one which is shown in the red line, that is the degradation of the resources, natural resources, and also the adverse impact on climate that we are making. So how can technologies, especially the emerging technologies, make a difference into these problems and challenges? Next one, please. So with this, we started on this journey. I chaired a working group for the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, and we came up with this idea. So vision is to enable creation of a national digital agriculture ecosystem. It's not a system that we are targeting, but entire ecosystem consisting of public, private, NGOs, civil society, central, state, local governments, and so on. And with the aim of enhancing the welfare and income of the farmers as one of the main objects of this program. Yeah, next one. So these are the top of the chart outcomes which are expected out of this idea. Data-driven decisions at the farmer level, smoothing or removing the inefficiencies in the agriculture supply chains, and precision agriculture, and also the right price to the farmer. And at the end of the day, when you are handling so much of data and creating innovation, how do you ensure the privacy of the data of the farmer? There are many more objectives, but envisaged outcomes, but I put the top 5 here. Next one, please. So obviously, you need to look at the whole picture of the entire value chain, as you can call it. The entire design of idea is based on this. How do you create value? How do you drive the whole program by value? So this picture shows here, around 3 major stakeholders, namely the farmer, the government, and the markets on the other side, and the industry and innovation on top and bottom. So if you see, each of those nodes talks about one value node around which you can either create new value or enhance the existing value. Take inputs, how do you make the supply chain more efficient? How do you enhance the quality, traceability of the seeds and other inputs that go into the farming? So likewise, on the environment, which is related to what we're discussing here today, this seminar is one of the value nodes there. How do you reduce the impact of, impact on the adverse impact on the environment, sea sequestration, and other techniques that are required? How do you enable technology to guide all this, value additions? So this is based on this, the entire architecture has been designed, which I will share in the next slide, please. Yeah, so I think there is one slide missing in the middle, but can you just go back one slide, please? Okay, fine. Maybe there's some. So this is while the very busy architecture is there, multi-layered architecture, which somehow seems to be missing here in the presentation. But the key thing is, core of the whole thing is about UFSI, or Unified Farmer Service Interface. Today we have seen, it's a very, as one of the speakers mentioned, it should be simple, but not simplistic. So this is a simple representation of the entire architecture. The data, which is key to the achieving most of the objectives here. There are data providers on the one side, including the farmers and various other players, public, private, and individuals, and the consumers on the other side. And how do they exchange data in an efficient manner and a consent-driven manner? So this is trying to achieve that UFSI, just like, the comparison is with UPI in India, Unified Payments Interface, which made it so very simple. Without a person without digital literacy can transfer money up to 2 lakhs or 200,000 rupees in a fraction of a second or receive the amount effortlessly. So likewise, farmer services, I heard, how can soil health card be more meaningful to the farmer? So it can be made to happen very effortlessly and very simple manner with use of Unified Farmer Service Interface. So this is the key to the whole architecture I wanted to stress. And the key is about consent management. It's based on consent, the data moves from one place to the other. Yeah. Next, please. Next one, please. Yeah, so this is about IDEA project. The second project, which is actually, complementary to the IDEA project, is the AI for AI, or AI for Agriculture Innovation, which we are doing along with the Ministry of Agriculture and also Government of Telangana. How do you leverage the emerging technologies like AI to transform the agriculture sector in a sustainable way is the key. We started on this project sometime in August last year, and we are at a very critical point at this moment. Yeah. Next one. Yeah, so this output of the last 6 to 7 months has been, we identified a set of, this is the big picture of what all can be done using emerging technologies in the area of agriculture. You can see the value chain horizontally in the middle, starting from how do you plan the crop at the national level and at the local level? How do you manage the farming more efficiently through smart farming? And then from farm gate to fork, and then finally, the data-driven agriculture through better data governance. So all aspects have been examined in this particular project with the help of industry and startup community and governments, academia. And we came up with, end of the day, 9 frameworks, which are in the light blue on the top half of the slide, and 30 specific use cases, which address various kind of problems. Like for instance, in the planning, you can see, how do you plan for priority crops? How do you enhance the value that a crop brings to the farmer by shifting the nature of crop that is traditionally taken? So import substitution, high value crops like organic crops and so on, organic cultivation and so on. And also ClimateSmart Agriculture also will form part of it. How do you plan for it? And likewise, across the whole value chain, you'll see. And I heard also discussion around data marketplace. You'll see on top right and corner, agri data marketplace is also pretty much there. So data as a commodity here. Yeah. So this is a synopsis of, and we are on the verge of implementing this project along the government of Telangana in India on a fairly significant pilot in this. Yeah. And aspects like quality assessment and traceability, which are also relevant from the perspective of the discussion here today. So it's a very exciting project we shaped up. All this documentation has been done, and we are raring to kind of go to the market with this proposal in this month. Next one, please. So last but not least, very important is the need to work on a structure that preserves the privacy and the individual farmer-driven approach to the whole thing. So we created this 3P framework as part of the A4A project, which is protect the interests of the farmer, whether it is data, there's consent-based mechanisms, data rights. What is the advantage for me, benefit for me if I share a bit of data? So that right has to be protected, and so on. And then prevention of misuse and anti-competitive practices, and also promoting innovation and standards. In a nutshell, this is what has been built into the by design. It's privacy and protection by design in the program. Next one, please. So this is some more level of detail. It's based on certain principles for responsible data sharing. I won't go into detail, but I think it will be available in the pack. Yeah. Next one, please. Yeah, this is what I had to say. Net, IDEA is a large, complex system that tries to address the problems with a systematic use and responsible use of technology across the entire value chain. And AI for AI is, a subset of that, which is looking at emerging technologies like AI and IoT and blockchain and drones in the space of agriculture. And of course, in both of these projects, there is a space for CSA. So I hope that in the next 12 months, we'll see, a lot of impact begin to happen through these projects. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Satyanarayana sir. I think really exciting to hear about IDEA and how it's being taken as a digital agriculture ecosystem, like you said, and not just a digital system, and how the vision is also to enable farmers to take informed decisions, and that entire focus also of the data architecture, I think being on consent and privacy being I think really important decisions that are ongoing right now. And I think it also really highlights what you showed towards the end of the presentation, the extensive amount of work that's really going on to improve farmers' livelihoods and lives through efforts like these that are happening at different scales, national scale, state, global, all as well. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And I think with that, I would also like to close the session. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying much longer than we had planned. But I guess it's been a super engaging discussion. The insights from all the panelists and in the breakout sessions as well. I think we heard so much. Everyone heard so much, and there's a lot to think about, to chew on as well. Where something as critical issue as climate change, which is probably one of the biggest issues that I guess the world's facing right now. And I think immediate actions, of course, need to be taken. So all of these discussions really, I think, help all of us to put more thought and insight in how we really tackle the situation and these issues. And as I close, I'd also say that we would look forward to continuing these discussions and talks in other ways and in different forums in the coming weeks and months. And we will make the recording for this available and other materials, including the workshop report and the presentations that happened here as well, very soon to you. So thank you once again for joining, and good night and rest of the day for the rest of you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone,
so
sir.
much.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.